Thank you very much. So I am very happy and proud to be here at the Schrödinger Institute. For me, it is the first time. So it is. Oh yeah. And actually, it's okay. So my talk, it will be okay. So we work on a very much project-oriented problem with engineers. I work with them with engineers. And I will explain the problem. And because of that, and we wanted to use a neural network and machine learning to solve some certain PDs, to design new numerical methods for PDs. I mean, it will be very dedicated topic, you will see. But at some point, we needed to understand what does it mean to sample, to construct a data set, to sample points in a space of large dimension. And for me, it was not exactly the first time. But okay, nevertheless, this is the reason of this. Okay, and at some point, there was the possibility to find a formula. I didn't find this formula in the literature on Latin hypercube. Perhaps it is known, but nevertheless, I think it is interesting because it is efficient. And okay, so all my talk is about this. So let's go on. Commence bien. Okay, main motivation. So there are 4 parts. The main motivation is 3 parts. I will explain what is this project-oriented problem. Then the part with the Latin hypercube with the formula. The only, you will see, it will be essentially combinatorics, okay? A tentative to extend to lattice rules. And then back to the initial problem when I will explain how these tools, how they behave for the problem. Okay, what is the problem? The problem is that with engineers and with people, yes, in the industry, we want to solve a transport of interface problem with transport of interface. Okay, so it is in 2D. The model equation is a transport equation in 2D. It is an hyperbolic equation, so it is not a parabolic or elliptic equation as this morning. So the difficulties are not the same. And the second difficulty is that it is an interface problem. So this is the initial data, and it is known that if we use, okay, so we transport in diagonal, periodic boundary condition. So if we use a first order linear scheme, even if it is stable and convergence under a well-known theorem, it's completely useless. So in this community, people use what they call VOF method, volume of fluid. I mean, they try to transport interface or to reconstruct finite volume fluxes, which are able to transport discontinuous data, to reconstruct and to transport discontinuous data. So the basic scheme will be a standard finite volume. So this is a cell. Imagine this is a cell, there is an interface, and the question is how much of, okay, you have an indicatrix function, 1 and 0, but how much and 1 and 0 do you need to transport when the flux goes up in this cell, for example? This is the kind of problem, okay? So it is known that the classical solution are really bad at that. And this is the result of, this is a second order scheme, quite bad. This is a technological scheme, and this is one of our new schemes which are produced by machine learning methods, neural network and machine learning. So we were quite excited. So we think that there is some potential for that. And actually, the reason is very simple, is that with machine learning, it is possible to learn how what is a corner typically, something which is extremely difficult to perform with standard numerical analysis. Okay, so this is the main reason. Okay, but whatever. So this is our long-term goal. And essentially, what we do, we have a mesh, we have cells. So it is just a 3 by 3 block of cells. So it is a central cell plus neighbors. And if we assume that we have an interface and we have an indicatrix function somewhere here, the key thing is that we have to describe the interface, construct a data set. So for example, for a circle with a certain number of parameters, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, plus, okay, you can describe the interface, but with more complicated interfaces, and especially in 3D, we will need more parameters. And if beta is some measurements of the the length, the horizontal length of this red part, it is possible during one time step to transport this part from this cell to the other one. Typically, something that a finite volume scheme is able to do. Okay, but in order to do that, and if you're able to do that, so what you do, you describe you have a certain parameters to describe that as interfaces, and by numerical integration, you compute the volume fraction. So typically, this is a vector here of size 10. 10 because you have 9 volume fraction, 1, 0, and something in between here. Beta, which is the average length of the red part. And then what is needed is to reconstruct the output flux, alpha star. So actually, we need numerically a function from this to this, but what we know is function from this to this. So essentially, this is an numerical inverse problem. So if we are able to sample theta in its natural space, then by numerical integration, it is possible to construct a data set for the xi and the yi. So it is the same notation as in this morning. The x will be the natural input of a neural network or machine learning approach methodology, and the y will be the output. So here, probably it is a function. This guy is in R10 and this guy is in R, a priori. And then the goal, it was described this morning, is to minimize some const function, which may be the Lewis square function, where you have a certain function, let me call it f for simplicity, which there are some certain weights, which are typically the weights of a neural network reconstruction of f, and there is the output. And let's assume that this guy is a function of x too, so everything is a function of x. And this is the structure of the problem that we want to minimize. Okay, so but nevertheless, for doing that, we need to construct the xi, the yi, so to know how to sample the theta. So this is our problem. So you see, it is very technologically oriented problem. Essentially, if by a minimization procedure we use softwares, we are able to compute the W that minimize at best this thing, then the function f will be quasi zero. Okay, due to this. Okay. So our problem. So now the problem is it possible to sample the theta I or the xi? Say, assume it is the same, such that this resembles the mode the integral of the function f. This is a very classical problem, of course. And this is our problem, okay? So typically, we do sampling in spaces of high dimension because of that, okay? We want to do machine learning for this complete. We have many kind of interfaces, and this is okay. So to end this motivation section, this category of work for us was very much motivated by some seminal work of Jan Estaven and Dipray. They published some years ago, 4 years ago, one of the first papers on a numerical method constructed with a neural network and machine learning. And their idea is that because they need something very nonlinear, why not using a neural network? And as you see, all the papers that I am quoting here, and even Hall's, are published in the Journal of Computational Physics. So it is really what you may think of at numerical engineering, or numerical methods which are implemented and tested. So it's not abstract numerical analysis that I am doing. It is practical numerical analysis. Okay, but nevertheless, the problem now is that we have to sample the theta. Okay, so because we are beginners, we tried. Okay, so because we are beginners, we had to understand and try all the methods which are known. So here I tell you what I understand about these methods. Some of you know much better than me, perhaps most of you, especially in this audience. So essentially, when we have, okay, theta is in a hypercube. We have three first methods to discuss, which are, of course, uniform sampling, which is useless. Monte Carlo, where we draw at random points in the squares, and a Latin hypercube, which is the same. But they are not exactly drawn at random because there is, I call it the line column exclusion principle, meaning that once you have a point in one column or one line, you're not allowed to take another one. Okay, so it's more space filling. This is what people think of that. So Monte Carlo, and actually it was invented by people in computer science. No, published the first time by people in computer science. And for us, at the very beginning, we are not completely sure. Okay, for us, this method is interesting because clearly it is an intermediate between this and this, in the sense that, of course, if you project all these points along one of the axes, you get a uniform mesh. So in a sense, it is intermediate. So this is a definition. There are many ways to write what is. So now here, so a definition, okay. So what I call a Latin square of size n, it is because there are n points. And these n points, it is sufficient actually to describe these points that you draw at random by just saying that you take all the coordinates on the first axis, and then on the second axis actually just a permutation of the coordinates is enough. So this is a permutation function from the set of points 0 to n-1 into the same set. So it is called the symmetric group, if I remember well. And if you take n-1 of these guys, you have a way to parameterize all the Latin hypercubes. Okay, so that the number of Latin hypercubes is necessarily factorial n to the power m-1. And actually, it is the postdoc I was working with. He is very well versed in scientific computing who showed us that this is a good idea, because actually for implementation it's super simple to implement what is a Latin hypercube with the instruction shuffle. Okay, whatever. Okay, so these are my notation. One Latin hypercube is noted like this one, and the set of all Latin hypercube is here. Okay, so what about the convergence? So it is known since, say, a long time that Latin hypercube have the same. So this is just a copy of the paper by Law. That they converge, say, in the sense of probability, with the same kind of results than in for the Monte Carlo method. So this is the classical L2. Comment on appelle ça? Expectation L2 boundedness hypothesis, so that the expectation of is bounded. And this guy actually in his paper is for this, and this guy is for the integral. Okay, so this converges to this, but what it is said, it is almost surely. And very honestly, I am not very satisfied by that. We were not very satisfied by that because we wanted to have more quantitative estimates and more practical estimates, because and also we do not want to send n to infinity, because this theorem says, okay, if n goes to infinity, it will be close enough at the end, but it's not exactly. So this is where I show you the formula that I like. Once again, perhaps it is known, but I have to say that for me, a test where I sent an abstract to this conference, and I said to myself, oh, perhaps they will review the abstract and they will tell me, no, the formula is known. Such a formula is known. Go to this book or go to this well-known paper. So for me, it was the first test. I mean, that the abstract could be accepted. Okay, anyhow. Okay, let me now describe. So I take a function, which is the sum of these Fourier modes, typically, or the classical hypothesis. And now the integral, the numerical integral. Yes, the numerical integral, it is 1 over n. The sum of the function evaluated at the at the points in the Latin hypercube, which is described by sigma 2 until sigma n. And here, just in front, it is a complex number of modulus 1. It is just because in the Latin hypercube, it is more j plus 1/2. So the plus 1/2 is removed in front. It does not depend on the permutation, and it is so it's a non-important complex number of modulus 1 for simplicity of the notation. And the full point now. So now the point is to understand what's going on with this divided by n. This guy is non-important, okay? And the point is the following. If you calculate the square of this guy, okay, so it is 1 over n, the sum of certain number of modulus, complex number of modulus 1. So you can always calculate the squares of the numbers and then all the double products. The double products are there and the squares of the number are there because you have n numbers and n divided by n squared, it is 1 over n, okay? So now what is remained is to calculate the double products, and actually this guy, the whole point is that it is possible to factorize this formula. And to factorize, meaning that if you sum over all Latin hypercube, then you can permute, you can make a commutation of the summation indices, of course. And the points are here, and then you have the sum over sigma 2 until sigma n. And now the only question is it possible to calculate this guy? So it is classical stuff in a number theory or Fourier analysis. But the point is now it is sum of the permutations. Sum of the permutations. And because it is sum of the permutation, actually, it is just possible to take only the internal formula and then you look at what's going on. So you have two cases, either j is equal to j prime or they are different. Oh no, j is necessarily different to j prime. But actually, because sigma is a permutation, whatever j and j prime are, then sigma j you will get all number alpha between 0 and n minus 1. And sigma j prime, you will get all numbers beta between 0 and n minus 1, but different of alpha because it is a permutation. And how much do you have? But then the remaining permutation, which is not informed. So this guy is actually this multiplied by this. And this, because it is, of course, a root of unity, you can compute. This guy, it is just minus this guy applied with beta replaced by alpha. And then you do the calculation. And you have two cases. So the cases is either Km is equal to 0 modulus capital N, or then the result is n factorial, which is normal, or it is different from 0, and then the result, you get that, which is less, of course, by a factor n somehow, asymptotically. So the formula at the end is the following. So you have a closed formula, which is this one. You get this, you sum over all Latin square, you divide by the number of Latin squares, and you get that, and this is a closed formula where everything is known. And you can check by Python code, you can check it is perfect. And where the delta is 1 if k alpha is 0 modulus 1, and mu is the complementary number, okay? And you immediately see a certain number of properties of this formula. Of course, you get that if k is equal to 0, and if k is equal to 0, all these guys are equal to 1, then you will have n minus 1 plus 1, you have n divided by n, so you have 1. The result is 1, which is normal because it is the constant function equal to 1. And if just 1, if they all vanish except 1, if they all vanish except 1, it means that this 1 is 0, all other are 1, but then you will get n minus 1 divided by s minus 1, which is 1 minus 1, and you will get 0, which is perfectly normal because it means that the Fourier mode is only along the first axis or the second axis or the third axis, but only. So, and it is known that equi-distributed numbers are perfect quadrature points for Fourier modes in 1D. And with the same formula, you can check. Actually, it's not evident, but it is exactly the same analysis. Like if you take two different Fourier numbers, then so of course it is kind of a scalar product. it is perfectly zero, which is not clear. In fact, before doing the calculation, it is not clear. Of course, asymptotically, in the sense of probability, it must go to zero, for sure. But it is exactly zero. This is the point. Okay? And then, once you have that, it means that essentially this is the norm, the L2 norm you have to work with, and the scalar product is derived as well. And it is now classical analysis. For example, if I take a function, I know its expansion in terms of Fourier mode, so I need to truncate a certain number. If I am able to control the difference between the Fourier, the truncated series and the function in L infinity norm, it will be very convenient to control the errors at the points or in any Latin square. And it is known that with Jackson kernel, this is classical numerical analysis. I just recopy classical textbooks by Devor Lawrence. You have all the tools. So essentially, blah, 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 blah. Yes, perhaps it's better to. Okay, then there is a problem. So, okay, the problem is that the classical theorems, but I was discussing with Fabio Nobili at lunch, and actually he told me that it is well known. So the classical theorems are that, of course, these formulas are okay, but functions which are periodic, which are continuously defined in the torus. So it means that for a practical application, of course, no functions are never periodic. So it means that now we have to sacrifice something in either we consider we make a cutoff or we duplicate. Maybe, okay, but nevertheless, at the end of the analysis, what we get is that I take this formula, which can be derived without any need of a notion of a random variable. And you take the square root because it is more classical. And by means of the classical thing I explained you, plus Cauchy-Schwarz inequality, plus classical stuff, you get the standard 1 over square root of n, plus an error which is controlled. Okay? This is what I call the non-probabilistic proof in the title. Because, okay, the result, of course, the interest of the result is only in the sense of probability, of course, because this guy actually, 1 over this number, it is just the probability of drawing at random 1 Latin hypercube, of course. So it is exactly the same formula as the classical one. So it is the expectation, the variance, the square root of the variance. Okay, of course. But okay, and of course for Latin square, if ever the function is only depends only on one variable, then you have classical integration inequalities. All functions, of course, depend here on the cutoff function that I need to put so that what I write is rigorous, of course. Okay, good. Then, because we wanted to go one step further, I will show you numerical results. Okay. We wanted to evaluate. I wanted to evaluate lattice rules for the same problem. So for me, it is very okay. Of course, it is very natural question because if I understand Latin hypercube as a certain sampling parameter such that the projection on all axes are perfectly equidistributed. So now it is natural to ask if the projection on all faces or hyperfaces or whatever are also equidistributed. Okay. For example, imagine a cube. You have n cube cells, and you want to draw n square cells such that the projection on all faces is perfectly equidistributed. And actually, with the rules with the lattice rules explained by Jan Sloan, which are actually based on this very simple property. It is just a linear algebra property in Z over NZ. If a certain determinant of a certain matrix which can be drawn at random is prime with respect to n, then this is a permutation. This kind of things. And because it is a permutation, then it is possible now. For example, if I am interested in lattice rules of rank 2, so I take R equal to 2, and then m is the size of my A per cube, the dimension of my A per cube. And if the linear representation is an A is made with entire number, yes, numbers, modulo n, of course, then you have this property which were due to Sloan and Korobov. I write it which says that this is a lattice rules. But nevertheless, it is not the way I like to implement the method, because you have to find A, and to find A is not that good. I think, for example, I see first, once I have a lattice rule, meaning that I have a certain transformation with A, with a certain matrix A and a certain right-hand side B, which is not important. It is better. It is much better. No, it is not much better, but it's possible to compute to compose with permutation around all axes, exactly like in the lattice in the Latin hypercube method. So this is more randomized lattice rules. It explained, for example, in this. Okay, so this is the way I use lattice rules. So this is an example of a lattice rule that was drawn in dimension 15. It is perfect, and the projection I check on all. Okay, it is known. Huh? So it is a lattice. Okay, so how I do? I draw at random the matrix A, and I check if all the determinant of the 2x2 submatrices or prime with respect to capital N, and N was chosen as a prime number, of course. And then after that, I composed with permutation which are drawn at random. And so you have the cloud of points, which seems perfectly random, and you have the projection on various spaces. But nevertheless, there is a difference between lattice rules and Latin hypercube, it seems to me, even if I compare with the literature. It is the fact that I am not able, personally, I am not able I don't know the list of all such clouds of points, so that I can make a sum, just like in the first proof. When I made a sum of all Latin hypercube, I am not able to write exactly what I mean by the sum of all such cloud of points, such that the projection on all faces are perfectly equidistributed. So I'm not able to perform the same mathematical analysis. So there is a problem, it seems to me. There are some papers by Sloan and perhaps colleagues in the audience which address that in certain cases, but it seems to me not in not in all cases. But nevertheless, let me now write an example which is for me representative of what we want to do. So I take two functions which are super simple, you see. The first one is the exponential of x1 plus blah blah blah, blah plus xn. I think m is equal to 5. So by separation of variable, you get the integral of f1 in the hypercube. And the second one, it is more the absolute value of something which is x1 plus of an affine function. So it's more something like that. And it is very important. In my mind, it is important because it is representative of function which have low regularity, but we have in neural network because the ReLU function, which is one activation very popular in these softwares, it is more like F2. So whatever. And here I made test, of course. So this is an histogram. So this is for the first function. So this is the analytical value. You can check. This is it is around this. So in orange and green, you have the result obtained with the Monte Carlo method. So I draw a lot of Monte Carlo method with this number of points, n tot. And this is the histogram, which means that there is a certain spreading around the analytical, the exact value. And with the Latin hypercube, it is much better, clearly, with the same number of points for this smooth function. So actually, it is still a Gaussian, typically, but much more narrow. And with the lattice rules of rank 2, the projection on faces is exactly one. This is much better, once again. And the n is equal to 71, which is a prime number. This is okay. So how do I generate the the lattice rules, but then I draw the matrices at random, and then I apply the permutation at random. This is what is obtained. But if I am interested by the second function, and you also have the analytical value of this function, you can make tests as well. So the results now are essentially the same, which means that there's no gain on this example, no real gain, I mean, by using either Latin hypercube or lattice rules. And clearly, because the function has low regularity. And all the theorems that are produced essentially assume regularity. But okay, so what does it mean? It means either it is better or much better to use this method, or it is the same. So in all cases, it is worth the gain. Okay? So it is just by theoretical arguments. Okay. So now, okay, so now, okay, so what it means? So it is what I can say about Latin hypercube and the lattice rules. And as you see, it is known things, perhaps except the new formula. Okay. But now let me go back to my problem and let me compare what's going on if we use either Monte Carlo or Latin hypercube on the problem I described at the very beginning, which is our objective. Okay, actually, these were taken from a presentation by Mathieu Ancelin. Mathieu is the postdoc who worked on that. So I remind you, we have blocks of cells, and we want to produce a new numerical, a new finite volume formula, where a certain flux which will be applied on the red part will be predicted from these 9 values, which are the volume fraction, I mean the proportion of the blue part in the cell. So it is 0 there, 1 there, and perhaps 1/2 or something close here, plus the length of the red part. Why the length of the red part? Because in fluid mechanics, in dissolvers, it is time-dependent problem. So you have always you need the delta T, or you need the U delta T, the velocity, the volume of fluid which is exchanged by the one cell to the other during one time step. So this is given by beta. So we construct random interfaces by sampling the space of parameters we have decided. We compute by numerical integration the volume fraction. So now we have the data set. We choose a certain ML machine learning model or neural network model. And as described in this module, we have to decide of a certain structure. In our case, typically, we take simple structure, typically not more than 4 hidden layers and perhaps 20 neurons on the average per layer, this kind of things. And then we minimize that. And then at the end, we see what's going on our finite volume simulation, which is our goal. Okay. So as explained by Mathieu, okay, so what we are doing, actually, everything is done in our own computer. We are not taking data from elsewhere. So this is typically Monte Carlo or whatever. And this is uniform sampling. And as mentioned by Mathieu, Latin hypercube seems to us always better, never less accurate than what we do when we use Monte Carlo. And actually, even worse, we had some difficulties with Monte Carlo sometimes. Probably because Monte Carlo is not very good at doing space filling in all regions of the parameter of the phase parameter, something which is very difficult to control actually. And perhaps certain of our implementation were not space filling with the Monte Carlo method. And we observe a certain type of instabilities at the end. Because of course, when we sample in a bad way, then the numerical flux is at the end of the training a bad numerical flux, and then we put it in our finite volume solver, then the results are bad. Okay, so this is important to have, of course, a good space filling methods, and probably Latin hypercube is better. Or, as we saw in the theoretical part, it is sometimes better or of the same orders. Okay, so interfaces in 2D can be described by 4 to 8 parameters. It's not that much, but in 3D, we will need much more for sure. Sphere or even polyhedrons. We will need a lot of parameters, but 20 we don't know, something like that. When we did the Monte Carlo method, we used to construct a data set with 1 million samples, and with Latin hypercube, clearly, we were able to reduce the size of the data set to perhaps 10 to the 5, and probably it is also one reason why the methods behave better, because of course when you do the training with less data, it helps the algorithms. I mean, even the training is better. Oh, okay. Okay. Ah, yes. So here I have 2 movies because I think it's funny. But so it is the end. It is our objective. Okay. So this is just to remind you the kind of data sets that we construct. It is vectors of size 10, 9 plus 1, which is this length. And you see here the volume fraction. You understand very well what it means. Here it is just a block of 9 cells cut by a straight interface, but we have the same with curves and corners and many other kind of interfaces. Let's see if so here it is a reference solution. So a typical, oh yeah, oh non, c'est pas le bon. Stop. I made a mistake. Ah yeah, no, okay. So, okay, stop. Hop. So this is typically one reference, one problem, a typical problem. So it's not the mesh. It's perhaps 100 or 60 cells. Okay, and you have to understand that we want to transport in a finite volume method which is conservative in mass. So this is the reference solution. One typical. This is called the Zalezak waltz. I mean, the waltz is waltz is a typical Austrian art. No? Okay, but nevertheless, where is it? Excuse me. Ah, I have some difficulties to control this thing. Okay, so then you understand the difficulty, because we need to have interfaces which are curved parts, straight parts, corners with sharp angles, acute angles, and so this is why it is a difficult problem, and this is why classical methods are bad at that. And this is one of our results, for example. Let me show you. So actually, on the left, okay, so you see, of course, here the mesh. You see the mesh. Okay, so it's not perfect. The representation is not perfect, but that's not what is important. So actually, this is an engineering algorithm which is known in the VOV community. And the game is to see if we are able to do better with our numerical, which is produced by neural network with the sampling procedure that I explained you, and to compare if it is better or different than the classical, more classical algorithms which exist in this community in fluid mechanics. And you see that for the valves, it's not that bad, clearly. But the notion of a corner, of course, is lost. Of course, the mesh is little too coarse, so that you're able to think precisely. But with the neural network produce a numerical method, clearly it seems better. So the ability to reproduce corners and angles is much better. And it is also possible, and there are plenty of interesting problems, numerical analysis problem for this kind of methods. For example, we don't have a theory of convergence for schemes which are produced by neural network. And there are even worse things which are worse. For example, this is a test case that I did myself, this one. So I look at the convergence for a certain transport of an ellipse, for example, on this column, and I look at the convergence order. And if I look at the convergence order, clearly it converges at order 0.5, which seems to me correct because the theoretical comparison with the upwind method, it is also order convergence at 0.5 in L1 norm. Technological algorithms are able to do better, but still with accuracy is not as good as with the new method. But the thing is that this first calculation was produced with the sampling with the Monte Carlo method, and with new results by Mathieu, where the sampling was performed with the Latin hypercube. I don't know if it is the reason, but for some reason where he performs the convergence with respect to X, classical convergence order with respect to X, okay, test in L1 norm, he observed that the new method, perhaps the other parameters were better tuned, I don't know. So now it converges at order 1, which is quite a good performance for the transport of discontinuous data on. But I just wanted to mention that here at this point, I am not able to understand if the gain in accuracy in asymptotic accuracy is due to the sampling method or not. I mean, so that this debate between the Monte Carlo or the Latin hypercube sampling in the space of parameters, we have it at all steps of our approach. Even at the end, when we want to interpret the results. I observed that something that was sampled with Latin hypercube pairs perform better, but I don't know if it is the reason. I presume it is not, but I'm not. Okay. Okay. So this is my conclusion. So there was this deterministic proof of convergence, which is just exact calculation of the L2, what is it? Okay, the L2 norm or the L2 scalar product were correct with respect to the list of all Latin hypercubes. Personally, I think the extension of this analysis to lattice rules or randomized lattice rules is still an open problem. Everything is motivated by a numerical engineering project, and I have some textbooks in preparation. And thank you very much for your attention.